So I know there's been a lot of questions like, hey, I can't make this. I know that we do these during the workday, and we do the best we can to reach the greatest audience that we have. And sometimes it doesn't work because other people have things that they've got to do. So no problem. This will be recorded. We'll put it up where it's very accessible to everybody. No issues there. So today's topic, and I think everybody knows this because we are here for this, is preparing our community organizations to become 501c3 nonprofits. And I know that probably everyone at this point has received a 1099 form. So this is a tax form from Cherokee Nation that says, hey, you received money, grant funds, either those direct $1,000 grant funds that you'll get every year from Cherokee Nation, and or you received money from the CARES Act funding, and anywhere up to $2,000. So now you've got this 1099 form and you're going, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? So that's kind of part of what prompted us to move quickly into action with this process. So we're going to talk about what we do with that 1099 form at the end, but I did just want to address that I understand that that's where it came from. So the bulk of this isn't going to be a very long presentation, but I hope it helps you just sort of orient and calibrate with where you are and what's going to happen next. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. I know that Donnie and Abraham are graciously monitoring the questions list, and I will address all of those questions towards the end, but I'm going to go through all of this. Again, it's not going to be too long, and then we can come back and I will make sure that we address each of those questions. So I'm going to first start with just a very brief introduction about what happened. We had the CNCA and now we have the executive order, and sort of what are the differences between that and what that has done to open up this opportunity for your organization to become a 501c3 nonprofit. So back in 2008, a long time ago, the Cherokee Nation Community Association Corporation was established. So we called that the CNCA. Most of the organizations who are affiliated with CCO now were established under that CNCA umbrella. And everyone had their own little chapter. So the CNCA in and of itself was a 501c3 nonprofit, and all of the community organizations from the Valley of the Sun Cherokees all the way up to the capital city Cherokees in the east, all of these were chapters under this one larger umbrella. I think we've had about about 5 organizations go ahead and between 2008 and 2019, go ahead and become their own 501c3 nonprofits. So if you're in that category, you don't really need to be here today. You've already done all of this, but we're always here to help and support you no matter what. So that big umbrella, the CNCA, was the 501c3 nonprofit, and every one of our community organizations under that was a chapter. And so when at the end of the year, you would just give your information, your income and expenses to Tammy or somebody else in the CCO, on the CCO team. And then we would compile all of those together and file one tax return, usually using the e-postcard, which is what you're allowed to file if your organization has less than $50,000 in income. Excuse me. And that's the case. I think that was the case every year, that even aggregated together, all of our organizations made less than $50,000 a year. So CCO sort of always just took care of that for you. Well, when the executive order was issued in August of 2019, the CNCA was dissolved, and the executive order established an advisory committee to replace that. If you'll give me just a second, I got that tickle in my throat. I'm gonna take a quick drink. Thank you. So the CNCA was dissolved. So what happened then was that that umbrella nonprofit no longer existed. And therefore, all of the chapters under it, they still exist. You all are still doing your awesome work, and we want you to continue doing that. But since the CNCA itself dissolved, there was sort of nowhere you or the chapter organizations didn't exist and no longer existed in the eyes of the IRS, because there was like really no one to report your income to, because you didn't exist as an organization. Again, you didn't exist under the eyes of the IRS, but we want to make sure that you're still doing the great work that you're doing. And that's our starting point. Okay, so again, you got the 1099 form in the mail, and I know a lot of people have this question. So what we're gonna do today is talk about a couple of steps that need to happen before you can do anything with that 1099 form. So right now, just put it in a super safe place, you know, in a folder somewhere where you know it's going to be safe. Just keep it there. We're going to discuss what to do with this throughout the presentation, and doing something with your 1099 form is going to be the last step in this whole process. So just hang tight with that. Okay, so now what? Now you have the opportunity, your community organization that was once a chapter under the CNCA has the opportunity to become its own nonprofit organization. I want to just briefly discuss what that actually means. 501c3 is simply a designation under the IRS code. And it just says if you meet these qualifications, you can become what's called a 501c3 nonprofit, and that means you're exempt from paying income tax. That's all that means. So that when you get that that $1,000 grant from the nation, or you get, you know, CARES Act funds, you don't have to pay taxes on that. That's all that a 501c3, that's what that actually means. And I know a lot of people get that confused. We talk about 501c3s as being nonprofits, as one and the same. There are a little bit of differences, but for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and say that they're the same thing. So again, your organization no longer is connected to a nonprofit organization through the CNCA. And so this is your chance for your organization to become its own 501c3. So the good news is that we are here to help. The CCO team is here to help. I am kind of taking the lead on this whole process of getting all of our community organizations established as nonprofits. We are going to pay any filing fees, so we're here to help financially. We don't want this to be a daunting process that scares you or keeps you from moving forward. We're here to help. So we've developed, or we're developing some templates in plain language where we're just going to ask you a question and then you just answer it. And it doesn't have to be fancy, and you're not worried about using the right language or anything like that. What you'll do is just answer those questions the best as you know how, and then we will take that information and make sure that it's completed in the applications. And again, we're here to walk you through this whole process, and your board, your leadership team, everyone on your in your community organization will always have the final say before something is submitted. So none of us are ever going to submit anything on your behalf without your express approval. So I want to make that very clear. This is not an attempt for CCO or Cherokee Nation to like take over what you're doing. And in fact, becoming your own nonprofit is going to give you opportunities to be a lot more independent with the work that you're doing. So that's all great news. We just want to lay that groundwork there first of all. So you probably are going, what's the process? How's this going to work? What are we doing? How do we move forward? Well, the first thing I want to say is that communication is going to be key. Communicating with me and the team about where you are and providing the answers back to us. That's going to be sort of the number one piece of this whole process, is just making sure that we're on the same page with it. By now, you should have received an email outlining the process. And it was kind of a long email, but it gave you the basic steps for where we were going with this. I think those were sent out the beginning of the week, this week. If you haven't already received that email, please let me know. You can email me at lindy@epcollaboration.com. You can call me or text me at 765-602-3070. That'll come right here to my personal cell phone. You can see my sweet little dog there. We just had to bury her a couple weeks ago. And we have created a new email just for this purpose. I will still be monitoring my email. All of us at CCO will still have our emails, but I did create one just for this so that anything that we're working on doesn't get buried in my other inbox. So you'll always see anything originating from this email that says cco501c3@gmail.com. The name that will appear next to it, instead of Lindi Conover, it'll be Lindi 501c3. But because it's kind of a funny names, I have noticed that some of these might have entered into your spam folder. So if you haven't seen this email yet, let me know. First, check your spam folder. If you still didn't get it, let me know. We might have a bad email address on file for you, or maybe it's going to the wrong person. So just let us know and we'll make sure you get all of the information. We'll update our records and make sure that you're getting the communication from us that we need to move forward. So here's a quick little visual of this process, because I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I know it can seem like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so much work, but really it's not. I mean, it's gonna take some dedication and a commitment to answering the questions, but the process itself isn't gonna be all that daunting. In order to become a 501c3 nonprofit, there's a few things that have to happen. The first thing is that you have to get your EIN, which is the Employee Identification Number, otherwise known as your tax ID number. I'm fairly certain that all of our organizations already have an EIN number. So this is probably something that you're not even going to have to worry about. If you have a question and you're like, I don't know if we have our EIN, maybe leadership has changed over the last few years, which is very common for nonprofits or community organizations, and you're just not sure, just email me. I will look it up because we've got a list of them all and let you know what that is. The second thing, or perhaps the first thing, if you already have your EIN number, the first thing that we're really going to be focused on is doing your state articles of incorporation. Some of you may already have that, and if you do, I'll just need to see a copy of that, and that'll help us along the process, but we'll get to that in a minute. So again, the first thing that we're probably going to be focused on is getting your state level articles of incorporation completed. Once those are done and the state that you're in has approved that, then we start with our 501c3 filing process, and that happens at the federal level. That's when you'll actually receive your 501c3 designation. Then once that's done, then we can finally do something with this 1099 that you've received. As long as we do this within like 23 months, we should be good. There's not going to be any tax penalties or anything like that. So that's why I say just hang on to your 1099 until we get your articles of incorporation with the state complete and we get your 501c3 filing complete. Then we can do something with that 1099. Because right now, if you were to try to submit it, the IRS is like, hey, you don't exist. I have no way to, I can't accept this because I have nowhere to put it because your organization doesn't officially exist. So again, there's really three parts to this process: the articles of incorporation, then the 501c3 filing, and then we'll do the 1099 e-post card. I know there's a question and I will get to it in just a moment. Thank you so much. This is great. I'm glad you guys have questions. So I'm going to take a moment now to go through each of these steps in just a little bit more detail. So step one is that articles of incorporation. This is going to happen at the state level. We have, I think, about 12 different states that are represented by our different community organizations. There's several in California, there's a bunch in Texas, we've got a few in Kansas, and then we have some that are peppered throughout the rest of the US. So each one of these templates is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to make sure that your state, that we're asking you questions that are relevant to your state's articles of incorporation. So, Kansas City Cherokees, you're going to get a different set of questions than maybe the folks down in Texas will, because again, we've got it tailored to your state to make sure that we're answering all of the questions. Now, if you already have articles of incorporation with your state, that's great. You can probably skip this step. It is helpful for us if we can see your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, just to make sure that everything, that we're checking all of the boxes and we can advance you to the next step. So if you've already got articles of incorporation, please go ahead and email those to us at the CCO 501c3@gmail.com email address. Now, if you don't already have your articles of incorporation, I will be sending you a template in the email. I'll be sending you a template asking you a series of questions in plain language. I'll go over what some of those questions are going to be later in this presentation, but they should be fairly simple questions for you to answer. Again, they're going to be in plain language, so you should know exactly what it's asking. We don't want this to be an intimidating process. So we will use your answers to those questions in that template to fill in everything from the application, the actual application with the state. And again, you will always see and we will get an official approval from your organization before we file that for you. Or if you are more comfortable with it, we will give you the completed application for your approval, and then you can file that. However, whatever you're more comfortable with, we're going to work with you on that. Again, the filing fees will be covered by CCO. Likely the way that will happen is that each state, the filing fees are anywhere from $25 to $100. And then the filing fees at the federal level, I think, is $275. So what we will probably do is write your organization a check for the sum of those two amounts, for your state fee and your 501c3 federal fee. And you can just put that in your bank account. So then when we get ready to submit that, you'll already have the funds available. You don't have to wait on CCO to try to file that for you. So that's probably how that will work. Again, you'll always have the ability to file these yourself or let us do it for you. Either way is fine, whatever your organization is more comfortable with. Most of the time, each of the states will approve the articles of incorporation in a month or less. I think most of them are even maybe a week or less, but that's going to be dependent on each state. And I'm sure that people, different states are still dealing with COVID in different ways. And so it could take up to a month to get those approved by your state. Once that's done, you'll let us know, and then we'll advance you to the next step, which is step 2, the 501c3 federal filing. So we're going to be using this thing called the 1023 EZ form. And again, what we'll do with that, the filing fee is again covered by a CCO. You'll get a second template asking questions that were not addressed in the original articles of incorporation template. There will also be a second form that we'll have to ask you to file. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. There will be a second form that we'll ask you to fill out that just lets the IRS know that there's somebody helping you with this. So that's just a really quick little form that just says, hey, we know someone else is helping us with that, and your board of directors will sign it. And again, we'll have a template of questions in plain language asking you questions that you can answer, and then we'll take those answers and dump them into the official 1023 EZ form. Again, you'll have the opportunity to review that final form before submission, or if you are more comfortable with it, your organization can file that on its own. that process of approval at the federal level, I've seen it happen as quickly as 3 weeks, and I've seen it take as long as 6 months, 6 or 9 months even. I really don't know how quickly the IRS is turning those around right now in our age of COVID. So I don't even want to take a stab at trying to guesstimate how long that'll take, because I just don't know right now. But the 1023 easy form is usually quicker than the longer form. So that's all I can say about that. So then after we get your 501c3 approved by the IRS, you'll let us know. And that's when you can finally do something with that 1099 form. So there's a form online called the e-postcard. And this is sort of the tax return, if you will. This is like you filing your taxes. You're filing the tax return for your organization for that year. This is what any nonprofit organization who has revenue under $50,000 a year, which is all of our organizations right now, you can file this e-postcard. It's only available online. It's so simple. Like, it's so simple. It's like one step. You just put in the basic information about your organization, the name, probably, you know, your EIN number, and there's like a box to check if nothing has changed, like your board of directors or maybe your address or anything like that. They just want to make sure that, you know, how to get a hold of you if they need to. And then there's a little box that says my organization received less than $50,000 a year and in income this year. And then you just hit submit and that's it. It's very simple, but again, always here to help. And as we get our organizations all through this process, I'll do a little presentation about the e-postcard process. I want to let you know that this the e-postcard needs to be filed annually, but you don't have to go through this whole articles of incorporation and 501c3 process every year. You do that once and you're done, but you do have to file your e-postcard every year after you receive your 1099. If you don't receive a 1099, like if you don't get any funds from Cherokee Nation that year, that's okay. You will just keep track of what you did bring in and what you did expend through whatever means that is. That's what you would file on the e-postcard. There is no cost to filing the e-postcard. It's all done online. And again, we are always here to help, whatever that looks like for you. So again, we will be sending out the template with all of those questions probably next week. But if you want to start thinking about if you want something to be thinking about, here's some of the questions or some of the types of questions that will be on that template for you to answer. There's going to be basic information about your organization, like a mailing address and a physical address. How are your board members organized, your officers, phone number, website, things like that, basic information. They are some of the questions will also be like, what do you do? Why do you exist? Like, what's your purpose? And so if that, do not overthink this. Just let us know what your answers are. So if you say, we like to get together once a month and, do a cultural craft, or, we get together a few times a year and there are cultural or history presentations, just write those things down. You don't have to overthink this. Just be honest with your answers. What do you do? Who participates? And so this could be, as simple as, we're the, Kansas City Cherokees, and we, who participates would be, people who are Cherokee by heritage or have an interest in Cherokee culture, and that's your answer. Who participates in these things? Again, don't overthink these questions. We will do anything that needs to be done to fluff those answers up, or make sure that we include this word but not that word. You don't need to worry about that stuff. Just answer the questions, and we'll help polish them up so that they fit exactly what the state or IRS is looking for. How often do you meet? Again, we're not here to trip you up or catch you in anything. If you're supposed to be meeting monthly, but it kind of, you know, has petered out because of COVID, that's fine. Just say that. This is not your annual review. We're not going to find you out of compliance with anything. We know this is a really weird time. Just answer the question. How often do you usually meet? Once a month. Excellent. What fees, if any, do you charge your members? That's going to be something that both the Articles of Incorporation and the 501c3 filing will ask. And a mission statement. And if you don't have a mission statement, this is a good time to meet with your the other members of your organization and develop one. And if that's something that you need assistance with, you're not really sure how to start writing a mission statement, just let me know and we'll be happy to help you. So these are just some broad questions, just things like this. This is, again, this isn't stuff that you need to be worried about. You're just going to take a little bit of thought and some honest answers and we'll get you where you need to be. So what's next for you? You're going to be receiving the template, the Articles of Incorporation template, starting next week via email. Again, it will be coming from that the CCO 501c3@gmail.com. So check your spam folder. If you still don't see it in there, let us know and we'll make sure that you get it. You'll start receiving the templates, or you'll send me your copy of the Articles of Incorporation so we can take a look at it. And make sure it's all good, transfer anything from that into the 501c3 paperwork that we have, and get that out to you. I will also be holding office hours several times a month where, and we'll probably try to do one, 1 hour in the morning, maybe like the first week of the month, and then one in the afternoon, maybe the second week of the month, and then one in the evening on the third week of the month, just so that everybody feels like they have an opportunity to ask the questions. So these office hours, as I'm going to call them, those are for you. Those are for you to ask questions. I am going to be setting up a frequently asked questions or a fax Google Doc that will be available to everyone, because if you have this question, chances are some other organization has or will have this same question as well. And so we're going to go ahead and keep a list of what those questions are, and we'll answer them and make that available to you every time we send out an email. It'll probably just be like in the footer of the email, and you can just go in there and see if your question's there. So I will probably, during these office hours, take an opportunity to address any of those frequently asked questions as a starting point, and then you're able to just jump in and ask any questions that you might have. Again, the key here is communication, asking any questions that you have. We're here to help. This is the first time that CCO has had to do this, and so communicating with you and you communicating with us is going to be key to making sure that this goes as seamlessly as possible. So I'm going to stop there because I don't have any more content. This is, again, a pretty simple process when you really break it down. It's just going to take some thought and commitment to answering those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop I'm going to stop the share and open up the Q&A and see what questions we have. So the first question is, do you have a template for Articles of Incorporation? Melissa, great question. Yes is the answer, and you should be receiving that next week. So I already answered that one. I have another question. Okay, Eloise says that we have received our 501c3. So you guys are already done. That's great. So all you need to do now is take that. If you received a 1099 from Cherokee Nation saying that you received grant funds, you just need to file your e-post card. Eloise, if you have any additional questions about that, let us know. I'm not sure which organization you're with, but you're already done. Congratulations. So going to go ahead and move that one. Patsy, we love you. You always have such great questions. Patsy Edgar says, will you provide assistance for bylaws development if needed? The answer is absolutely. I know that in many cases, having a set of bylaws is part of the Articles of Incorporation process. And yes, we will be helping with that process. So thank you so much. That's a great question. Eloise also asked, do we request filing fees directly from CCO? I think I covered this, but I'll just mention it again. I think probably what will happen is that we will say, okay, for such and such state, the filing fee is $30, and the 501c3 filing fee is $275. Add those together, that sum, of course, is $305. So we would, CCO will just write you a check. I will let you know. I'll send you an email and say, hey, your filing fees check is on the way. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And then once it gets to you, you can deposit it in your bank and then move through the process as you file. You'll have your check or your debit card or however you're set up, so that as you submit that information, you can just as you're submitting the information to the state or to the IRS, then you'll have that money and you can just pay it right away. The physical, okay, so Melissa McKee asks the question, the physical address is the chairperson of the community, correct? So I think this is a great question, Melissa, and you have obviously looked at some of the 1023 Easy forums, and you've got this question because this is something that does come up a lot. There will be on the Articles of Incorporation and the IRS 501c3 application, it does require a physical address for the sort of chairperson of your organization. And that is the chairperson there, or the person who's likely to be the chairperson the longest, or is going to be committed to the organization, is probably the best person to put down as that physical address. So I hope that answered your question. And as we send you these templates, that will be very, we will make it very clear whose address needs to be there. And it is probably going to be your chairperson or your board president, or however you title that. I do know that I've talked with a couple of organizations, and they were a little reluctant, like, well, I don't want to give the IRS our, a physical address. It's just part of the process. I understand privacy. I respect and honor your privacy. I really do. But it is just a requirement of this information. And part of the reason that they do that, and they need a physical address as opposed to just a PO box, is in case they needed to send like some sort of certified mail to your organization, they would actually be able to give it to a person. But that person, whoever you list there, does not have like they are not personally responsible for the nonprofit status of the organization. So I just want to make that clear. Like, if your organization gets out of compliance with it, they're not going to come after you. They are going to address this at the organizational level. They just need to know who the point person is on that. So I'll just make that very clear. I hope that answers your question, Melissa. If not, let me know. Melanie Schneider asks, will you serve as a registered agent for our organization, or will we need to hire one? Melanie, I believe that your question is sort of in regards to, I talked about this in one of the slides. When you get to the 501c3 filing process, there is a simple form that says, hey, so-and-so, in this case, Lindi Conover, is helping us with this process. I think that's what they're calling the registered agent. And you're helping us with this process, and the IRS just wants to know who that is. So yes, if that is the actual question that you're asking, the answer is yes, we will serve, like someone from CCO will serve in that role. So you do not need to hire someone. That's not going to be an additional expense to you. Monty Hall, do you have an accounting program or format to use? I am not sure, Monty, if I understand your question on that. I may come back to that in a moment because I'm not entirely sure that I follow the question. So I'm going to move on and I'll come back to that one in a moment. Patsy, you are very, very welcome. We should not have to. Okay, Elvis says, previously when we were a sub, so I think he means like a chartered organization under the CNCA, we had financial reports due in March. If we are no longer a sub, we should not have to report. That's correct. If you are since the CNCA no longer exists and you are not officially, as Elvis is calling it, a sub or a chartered organization under that, you don't have to report to CCO your income and expense. However, you do still have a responsibility to report your income and expenses to the IRS. Additionally, and this is a very separate issue, and I want to make that very clear, additionally, if the nation has given you funds through grants, and in 2020 that happened especially through the CARES Act, the nation as a sponsor, a fiscal sponsor of a grant, may have requirements asking you to report on how you spent those grant funds. And that is a very reasonable expectation that any funder who provides funding to an organization might have. So that's not something that like Cherokee Nation is like trying to be heavy-handed about or anything like that. Like they just want to know what happened to the funds. And especially because CARES Act funds were federally, they're federal funds, Cherokee Nation has to report those to the IRS. So I hope those are two very different issues. One is we are letting, our organization is letting the IRS know how much money we have and how much money we spent, and versus you reporting how much money your organization has and how much it's spent to the Cherokee, to CCO. It's very different, but there is a reasonable expectation that the nation or any funder who gives you money would want to know what happened with their funds throughout the year. So I hope that made sense. Okay, Melissa says, thank you. You're very welcome. Just feel free to reach out anytime. And okay, Ron has some information that he's sharing here. This is really for stepping into completing the 1023. By including religious, this allows okay, should be mirrored in the articles. Okay, Ron is just providing some additional information, which we have covered throughout the template process. So I'm not going to share that, Ron. This is great information. I really appreciate it, but I don't want to confuse anybody with that. So everything that you've mentioned here is going to be addressed throughout our process of working with the organizations. But thank you again, Ron. I know you've been very proactive in making sure that that we had this information. So thank you so much. Oh, Eloise, she is with the Cherokees of Northern Central Valley. Thank you so much. It's good to put that name with a specific organization. So I do appreciate that. So Ron also says, clarification on an earlier statement. 501c3 is also important for donations. Yes, yes, Ron, it is. So what Ron is just bringing up to us here is that that 501c3 designation, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with this because it can get very confusing and I don't want people to get overwhelmed by all of this information. There are different kinds of 501c3s. There's different kinds of tax exemption. You don't need to worry about that. Just make sure that we have the information that we're asking for so that we can complete the information. Oh, it went away, but that's okay. So the reason, I think what Ron was saying here is that the 501c3 designation also allows your organization to provide a tax exempt benefit to anybody who donates to your organization. So what the heck does that mean, Lindy? What that means is this: a 501c3 nonprofit organization, if you receive funds, a donation, a $500 donation from a donor, the donor can then write that donation off on their personal taxes. So this is just, that is another benefit of becoming a 501c3 nonprofit. This allows your organization to have additional streams of funding from private donors, from local foundations, from public foundations, and we'll talk about that later. It's getting a little bit over our heads here, but just know that the 501c3 gives your organization an opportunity to do a lot more on its own. And we'll get to that later. We've got other programming that can help you think through that. So again, Ron, this is great information. I'm so glad you're sharing it. I just don't want anybody, this is just kind of a broad overview, and we don't want people to get too confused about what you can and can't do and why not. We'll get into that later. So thank you so much though. Let's see, Melissa asks, I think, Melissa, you're asking, does the chairperson's social security number need to go on the form as well? I don't have that form in front of me, and I don't remember. I know we've looked at it, but I will, you'll get the template information, and it'll say yes or no on that. If you are concerned, you don't want me to see that, and I would understand that. I'm not going to do anything with your social security number. I'm not even sure I would know how to use your social security number in an improper way. But if you don't feel comfortable, like if that is a requirement on the filing and you are not comfortable with listing that as we are helping you to review it, that's fine. What we can do is get everything else completed, then give it to you and your organization, and then you can go in and fill that in the last thing that you do before you submit it. So we will always, respect the privacy of the individuals within the organization, and work to work with whatever makes you feel comfortable. We will get there. Okay, so we've answered that question. Melissa has another question. You've got great questions, Melissa. Okay. Her question is, we have an EIN, but the address is incorrect. It's changed over the course of time. She tried to update it in October of 2020. Will this be an issue with filing? And how can this be prevented in the future? Melissa, I love your proactive thinking there. With changing the board of directors for, I don't know the answer to this specific question off the top of my head, Melissa, but this is a great question. And I'm sure it's something that we're going to come up with, like others will have this issue pop up. So Donnie or Abraham, if one of you could just write that question down or just keep it there for a second. That's a really good question. I want to make sure that we put it in our FAQs document. So you know what, I can screenshot it here. So never mind. I've got that screenshotted. I will find out the answer or try to figure out how we can help our organizations who might be coming across that same issue. I'll dump it in the FAQs, and everyone should have access to that again once we get that document up and going. Desiree Rutter says they're planning on filing for the 501c3. That's great. We're here to help. Just let us know what we can do to help you with that. Thank you for this offering, and you're welcome. Ron just says he understands, and thank you, Ron. You've been really helpful in making sure that we have a lot of good information, and I can't thank you enough for that. I certainly don't. I just don't want folks to get too overwhelmed at this stage in the process, because, there's a lot that comes along with it, but right now we just want to get everybody through it. So thank you so much for just continuing to support us and the other organizations through this. Melissa says, possibly a DPOA or other legal doc. I don't know what I have no idea idea what you're referring to there. So if you could maybe retype another question and explain what you're asking there a little bit more, that would be really helpful. Or we might be able to bring you on and answer that question verbally in just a moment. So just hang tight there, Melissa. Okay. Ron says on the accounting question, there are several small business accounting software packages available on the market. And it's also recommended that the treasurer obtain a book on nonprofit accounting. Okay, thank you for that, Ron. And we will certainly, this is a new process for everyone. Once you get your 501c3 nonprofit status, you're going to be in a, you're going to be in a different league, if you will. And again, Cherokee Nation and the CCO, we are here to help you get prepared for that. So Ron, I think your comment there is actually sparking an idea for me, which is let's plan to have, in a couple of months after we get a lot of these organizations through this process, we can probably offer maybe like a bulk discount. I don't know. I haven't looked into this. It's just off the top of my head right now, but maybe we can look into getting like some sort of bulk discount or some government discount for an accounting software program that we can provide to each of our organizations. And in addition, provide some training on that. Again, I don't want you to get too concerned. Our organizations tend to be pretty small. These, you're not dealing with millions of dollars. You're dealing with, hundreds or thousands of dollars each year. And so the accounting process really shouldn't, it likely won't be too involved. Though I do understand that even a small nonprofit, like you've got to learn a new software. If you're going to use a new software program, somebody's going to have to learn that software. So again, we'll be here with the technical training as much as we can, and especially after we get working through this process a little bit more. So Ron, thank you for sparking that idea. That's awesome. Barbara Warren asks, in regards to the physical address that is needed, can CCO's address be used along with CCO's EIN? Great question, Barbara. The answer to both of those questions is no. Because CCO is not the organization that is applying for articles of incorporation and applying for the 501c3 nonprofit. Your organization is. So Barbara, I don't know which organization you're with, but you will have to use your organization's EIN and your physical address to become a 501c3 because you're independent. Now, when this actually brings up a good point. You're independently, like you're financially like independent, you will still get all of the resources that Cherokee Nation has to offer. You'll still be getting your, the cultural and history lessons. Once we start traveling again, you'll still have those, the Chiefs picnics like every year. So the programming, the way that we interact, the way the CCO interacts with your organization is not going to change. The only thing that's changing is sort of your financial designation and relationship to the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. But because your organization is now establishing that relationship with the IRS, and you're not under the umbrella of CCO, you'll have to use your own address and your own EIN number. So that was a great question. I think that's it. I think there's no more questions here. If you do have some, please go ahead and pop those in there. Donnie or Abraham, Melissa had a question that I wasn't able to answer because I didn't understand the acronym. Is there a way to allow Melissa to be able to talk so that we can answer her question? Don't know.
Yes, I just opened that up so she could talk.
Awesome. Melissa, if you could ask your question, that would be great.
Hello, Donnie. This is my quick question. So my problem is that when I call the IRS to change the address, they really wouldn't let me get past go because I didn't have a power of attorney. to prevent this happening when board members change and they resign, people move on, a DPOA is a durable power of attorney. Now, the IRS rep asked me for POA, which is a power of attorney, but I think what she meant was a durable power of attorney, but there's got to be a different legal document out there so that we don't run into these problems in the future.
Okay, so was that more of just like a thought, or was that a question? Because I don't know the answer to it. Like, I don't know how to move forward on that, but we can certainly work together to get through that, because like I said, you're not going to be the only person or organization that is up against this. So the durable power of attorney, right? That's the
yeah.
Okay.
So currently, what I'm asking for is so people don't run into the same problem I'm having just with changing and correcting the EIN address.
Sure.
From the inception date with the other person that was on the board for a minute, maybe.
Sure.
Needs to be some kind of document so that
Okay, right.
change guards, in the at-large communities. That way we have the legal authority to move forward and get everything turned over to someone else's name. Say,
Sure.
Everything's at my house. My husband knows where everything is, and we'll just go to the vice chairwoman. There needs to be a legal document so that because the IRS just pretty much hangs up on me. So
yeah, well, nobody wants to sit on trying to get through to a real person who has a real answer. The IRS is not anybody's cup of tea. But so I can empathize there with you for those struggles. But thank you for that suggestion and for this question, because like we both said, you're not going to be the only one who has it as we move through this. So thank you so much, Melissa, and I'll get this on the FAQs, and we'll start to develop a good answer for it, or a good solution, even if it's not an answer, a workable solution. So thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. I think we do maybe have a couple more questions here. Kevin asks, when you initially register with your state, you name an agent. Okay, with changes to that, you would do a change of agent with the Secretary of State. So, Kevin, thank you for offering that piece of information. So yes, if you, these organizations could be established as long ago as 2008, and then, they naturally change, board leadership naturally changes. And so, yes, you have to change it at both the state level and the federal level. And there are mechanisms to do that. But as, sorry, Donnie and Abraham just went away. I hope everything's okay. They went away on my screen anyway, but there are mechanisms out there to handle that. But as Melissa said, sometimes they're a little easier than others, but we're here to help you with that process. So thanks, Kevin, for making that note for us. Okay, then Ron says a way to get around changing your address is to move your permanent address to a PO box. I think that's a great suggestion. It ends up creating a few more issues down the road, and the IRS does still want a physical address associated with each of their organizations. So you'll still have to include that as well. Melissa says if she understands correctly, once their organization files with the state, the EIN address will be corrected. I don't know if that is true or not, but we can certainly look into that, Melissa. That's a great point. Oh, yes, Sherry Whitaker, this is a great point. Sherry says she wants to add that each state may have additional filing requirements to be aware of. And that is absolutely true. Today's overview, this is sort of large overview. We wanted to walk you through the sort of the big phases of what was happening. But like we had said, the communication from us to you and you to us is going to be the most important key to making this process move move forward. And so as we're moving through that, we'll give you this template of information, and it's going to be tailored based on the state you're in. And there may be an extra, form or two that you have to file in Alabama that you don't have to file in California, for example. But we will let you know that throughout the process. So thank you so much, Sherry, for bringing that up. You're absolutely correct. We've planned for that. Today was just kind of this broad overview of what to expect. But these have been incredibly good questions, and I'm so happy that everybody has come and asked these questions, that we have so many people on this call today. We're close to the end of the hour here. And I don't see any open questions right now, but you're certainly welcome to drop them in. I think I am concluded my part of this presentation, and it doesn't appear that there are any additional questions at this time. But if you have them in the future, certainly email me. I think you all should have that by now, that email address. You can email me at my Lindi at EP Collaboration email, or you can email us at cco501c3@gmail.com. We are monitoring that all the time as well. You can give me a call, 765-602-3070. Or text me. If the question's really complicated, texting might not be the best way to go, but we'll get on the horn if we need to. So with that, Barbara has a comment here that USPS boxes have a physical street address, and the box is listed as the unit, and that you should be able to use it as a physical address. I want to get clarification on that before I say, instill that for sure, because I've heard contradictory information about that. And I think it's just a good idea to have at least a physical address on any of this paperwork. But we will work through that as we go through the process with each of our organizations. Ron also just says, thank you. Ron, I am saying to you, thank you for, fleshing out our conversations today. I really do appreciate it. So with that, I am going to close the presentation. And Donnie, if you have anything you'd like to add, I'm happy to do that. I do know, again, that this will be posted on our YouTube page and possibly on Facebook, or Donnie can tell us exactly where all it'll go. And as we open up office hours to address any specific questions, you'll know where those are. We'll send emails. You'll have them on Facebook. You'll have them on all of our other outlets. And just very happy to answer any questions and work with you through this process. Oh, Monty, my number. You asked for my number. It is area code 765-602-3070. Call me anytime. If I don't answer, leave me a message and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Well, Lindi, yes, I'll have this posted later today. It will be on YouTube, CCO's YouTube channel, and also on our Facebook page as well. So
awesome.
Great presentation, Wado.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.